Hi, this is Larry. What I want to talk about today is how to normalize. So what you need to consider is what is normal? Just like the Three Stooges at the top, they're contemplating how to be normal. We're going to look at the three normal forms, the first three. And let's pay attention now to the first normal form. Remember, each form means that you have a good ability to set up a database, and every entity in a database, relational database, should be in first normal form, period. So how can we tell then that an entity is in first normal form? Well, again, a unique identifier exists, and there are no repeating groups. Okay? A unique identifier exists means that there's a primary key. Please keep in mind that a primary key does not mean it's one attribute or one column in an entity. Okay? Basically, what it means is that you can have more than one attribute be a primary key. And then all the attributes depend upon that primary key. Because you have a primary key, you have no repeating groups. Repeating groups means that you do not have to keep entering the entity over and over and over again just to enter some other data. Okay? So you need a primary key. The primary key can be comprised of one or more different attributes. But all the attributes, this is key, all the attributes are dependent upon the primary key. So anything in that entity, all the attributes in that entity should therefore be dependent upon the primary key, meaning that it really needs to be more closely aligned to those primary key or that primary key. So if we look at, you can see a light just popped up here. There's some data, and these are all attributes or possible attributes to be in an entity. And we have course number, course section, course description, course credits, teacher num, teacher first name, teacher last name, classroom, class start, class end, and class time. All of these together are attributes that relate to what? A class section, correct? You think about when you go to take a class, these are all components of it. You take a course, it's got a course number, it's got the section of the course, it's got the description, the course credits. We know who the teacher is by their number and their first and last name. We know where the classroom is, the start and end time. Okay? So those are all things associated with the class. Now, how do we know what is true about this, if it's in first normal form or not? Well, what we want to do then is to identify the dependencies. We want to say, what is dependent on what here? Keep in mind when we have this first group we're looking at here, where it's supposed to be related to a class, and these are all the associates with the class. So how do we create an entity called class that we can store data about, and so that we have no repeating groups? So let's look at it. Well, if we look at it here, we want to look at dependencies. For instance, course number probably is with course description and course credits. And would you say that course description, course credits are really more dependent on the course number? And so is the course section. And then what about teacher number and teacher first? These are in here in the classroom, but these are all related to what? The course section. And this classroom start date and time would also be related to the course exception and also the course number. So what we're looking at here is basically all these are basically all related to course number and course section. I mean, they're more dependent upon it. Those would be what we maybe call the primary keys. And what we can do with this is the little exercise I'm just talking about is create something called a dependency diagram. And this is for the first normal form. We went through here to identify what was the association or the dependencies upon all these things. We could find for something we'd want to call class, we would have all of these different attributes would be more so dependent upon these two together than one alone. And to be able to call, since we need to have all this together, these two attributes would then become the primary key. So if we were to draw this out and create a table description, below this is a table description. This is the name of the entity. Then it's listed all the attributes in the parentheses. The primary keys are underlined. So these are the two primary keys as we see up with the dependency diagram. So when you're creating your first normal form or creating and understanding how to do this, is always start to try to find and draw a little dependency diagram if you can about this. And what you want to end up with is an entity. This is in class entity is in first normal form, which means that it's acceptable and would be good to be run within and can stand alone by itself, meaning you could run it as first normal form, be good. But actually we want to make it more normal. Really? Like the Three Stooges? Make them more normal? We want to make them more normal, so what we want to do is go to the second normal form from here. So as we get into second normal form, we notice that second normal form, it's a requirement it has to already be in first normal form. So before you can even go into the second normal form, you have to actually make sure that it's in first normal form. Get that? So to be in second normal form, you have to make sure what it would be in first normal form. So make sure that there's no partial dependencies now, is what we're looking in second normal form, is that there's no partial dependency. What's a partial dependency? Well, partial dependency means no attribute is dependent upon only a portion of the primary key. Well, let's look down here. So we were determined in first normal form, this class entity would have two attributes as what? These two attributes would be the primary key. Well, let's then go to the next step and let's take another look at the dependency diagram here and then be able to look at how it look if we wanted to look at partial dependencies. Well, look at this, is that if we took course number, we would know that course description and course credits would be probably more dependent upon course number than would be dependent on course sec together. Meaning that if we had the course number, course description, and course credits, they would be separate and you could actually have them as being another class, another entity. Is this making sense? So what we've done is we've gone in first normal form. We want to look for partial dependencies. Is there any more other attributes that would be dependent upon course sec without course number? No. All these other ones remaining would be dependent upon both of them. So therefore, what you're going to do in second normal form a lot of times is you're going to find yourself creating another entity. In this case, we're going to say this one is going to be class, the first normal form. We keep that. Notice in second normal form, we keep what was in first normal form. And then we have course, which would be the second entity, because these are the two that we have. Now, I want you to see here for something, looking at it. When we create the table descriptions here, is that basically class is the same setup with the two primary keys. But in the other entity that we just set up, course, what we've done is taken course description and course credits out of the class entity and put them into the entity with course. But course number still remains as part of class and course. And course number is the only primary key, the only attribute for the primary key in course. Now, what this means is a second normal form. It means that we don't have to, every time, if you had left course up in that information, course description and course credits, every time you wanted to make a change or add more sections of the course, you would always have to go back and create more instances of class. Well, maybe you didn't need to create instances of class, you just wanted to create more instances of course. Okay? So let's look on, and then now we're at second normal form. Okay? The key is identifying partial dependencies that may be a result. One of the things to think about when you're looking at the partial dependencies, if in first normal form you believe that whatever you have has only one primary key, one attribute being primary key, there's a high chance that that's already in second normal form. All right? So let's look at, now moving on to third normal form. Okay? Third normal form means that it's already in second normal form, meaning that you need to go through the process of identifying what it looks like, taking all the attributes you have, put them into a first normal form, then put them into a second normal form, then put them into a third normal form. Now what to do is to move into a third normal form is that we need to maintain no transitive dependencies, meaning that no describing attribute is dependent upon other describing attributes. Well, after second normal form, we end up having in this dependency diagram, as you can see here, is we have these attributes are all associated more with these three here are more with the course number. So we ended up creating another entity called course. But if we go back in here, let's take a look at each entity and where they do rely. Look at it: class time, class end, class start, classroom. Do these all have like some relationship? The only association they have or being dependent upon each other is based upon both of these, course number and course section. But when we get into looking at teacher num, teacher first name and teacher last name, would you understand that if I said teacher first name and teacher last name is more dependent upon teacher num than actually course independently or course section? Yeah. So what it looks like is when we put together, we do this, we look at the identify the transitive dependency, we find out that the transitive dependency now is that the teacher num becomes the primary key in a new table. So take a look down in here, is that you'd have teacher, another table, I shouldn't say table at this point, but it's another entity called teacher, where you'd have teacher num being the only primary attribute for primary key. You'd have teacher first name, teacher last name. Okay. Notice again that up in here that we still have class listed as an entity with course number and course section, but the teacher num is still there. So that means that these are two associated with each other, but we also have teacher, we took the teacher first name and teacher last name out of class and put them down below with teacher. We now have, if you look at this table listing, we now have all together is we actually have this whole, all those attributes we see end up being that we could actually have three different entities from it. One called class with course number and course sec, one called course with course number as the primary key, and then one called teacher with teacher num as the primary key. Again, eliminating repeating groups and making sure all the attributes are properly associated with each other. Make sure that every time you look at a database, one of the things you're asking yourself is it normalized? How could this be normalized further? Can we use it only at first 1NF? Or can we go to 2NF? And can we get it to 3NF? Always take the time to look at the data, not just about how you're going to use it, but also how you're going to make sure it's efficiently working within the database. And that all depend upon whether you're going to have it normalized or not.